So we're going to talk about why we can't get good black TV. There's a reason, and it's called the profit limit pattern. A demographic is only allowed to be as visible as it is extractable. So this means that stories get greenlit not to reflect reality, but to optimize the amount of emotion, identity, and energy that can be extracted from that group. Once extraction plateaus or threatens power, the narrative access shuts down. Visibility equals exploitable value, not actual care. So here's how this works. First, you identify what the group can offer the market. And usually, depending on who's speaking, this means different things. So for black people, they see pain, rhythm, rebellion, and spectacle. For Latino folks, they see exoticism, family, labor, and loyalty. Right? For Asian folks, they see achievement, mystique, and internal conflict. For white folks, they see complexity, universality, and self-doubt. For queer folks, they see aesthetic, transgression, and performance. And for trans folks, they see transformation, danger, and tragedy. This is the narrative commodity, the studio's version of what you're good for. And then you contain that group within a profitable narrative box. You can exist as long as you stay within the story we can sell. For black folks, you can suffer, you can be funny, you can die, you can rise through violence, but you can't be whole. Love without loss, joy without struggle, no profit. Anything beyond the profit limit feels niche, soft, unrelatable. So there's really 4 tropes like that 90% of black media kind of run into. Is that greenlit projects recycle the extractable narrative. So the media just relies on what they already know how to monetize, which is slave trauma, single black mother survival, angry black woman, reform black man through suffering. And they already know how to get money off of these, so they just keep going. And they suppress or undersell narratives that threaten the limit. What if a black couple breaks up respectfully and heals? Not dramatic enough. What if a trans woman doesn't die at the end? Not emotionally striking. What if an undocumented immigrant isn't hypermoral? Won't test well. Subtlety and nuance don't maximize extraction, and you get to see a ton of case studies literally per demographic. For black narratives, the profit limit is just pain, spectacle, and redemption. Undervalued is the softness, repair, community ecosystems, and spiritual nuance. For Latino folks, it is the profit limit was immigration struggle, cartel violence, Catholic guilt, and what gets undervalued is the class mobility stories, the black Latina dad, the intergenerational modernity. And for Asian narratives, we get to see academic pressure, silence, and stoic rebellion. But what gets undervalued is the joy, the mess, the sexual agency, the working class subcultures. And for white people, we get to see the existential crisis, the spiritual searching, the anti-heroism. That's their profit limit. But what gets overfunded for them is the narcissistic trauma tropes with no stakes for others. Right? You notice how I didn't say under this time. So here's the thing. Here's why this exists. Capitalism doesn't want equity. And this is something that the representation folks have a hard time hearing. Capitalism doesn't want equity, ever, in no circumstance. Some people think they can get equity through a film. No, it wants symbolic extraction. Narrative capitalism is not about telling stories. It is about managing perception and maximizing return. If a community becomes valuable, not when it heals, right? Not even if. A community becomes valuable, not when it heals, but when its wound can be packaged. When its wounds can be packaged. That's what I want y'all to get. That is the true profit limit. Healing is anti-capitalist, fundamentally. Right, just fundamentally anti-capitalist, wildly rebellious thing to do to the system to heal from it. Wildly rebellious, right? But the wholeness is is non-extractive. And joy is non-consumable unless you brand it. And what happens when groups try to go past this limit? Censorship and underpromotion, labeling as difficult or hard to market, targeted industry smearing. They're hard to work with. Flood the market with counter narratives, soft white rom-coms to balance out the black political shows, and repackaging the rebellion into a new consumable black format, like the Black Lives Matter merge, the radical chic aesthetics, that kind of thing. So the film industry doesn't just gatekeep opportunity; it gatekeeps possibility. Right? You're allowed to be seen, but just as much as you're allowed to be sold. So the moment you start telling stories that free your people, you pass that profit limit. You're not going to be included. Right? And the only reason this really gets to me is that I'm like a huge film guy. I write films and screenplays and books and stuff. A lot of y'all was asking me for a book. Y'all don't know I could have been geeked. I've been begging for people to read something I wrote. But I don't even know if I would sell it like that, but it really matters to me how this all happened. So in the second portion of the video, we're going to go through, or no, I might even make another one, but we're going to go through it by era because it literally is a direct link. Narrative capitalism is always aligned with whatever economic or political system that is extracting from black people at the time.